following program is brought to you in living color on WKYC-TV.
In cooperation with the Cleveland Museum of Natural History, WKYC-TV presents This World of Ours, a program dealing with our Earth's past, present, and future. Here's your host, Tom Offit.
Good morning. We're going to have a very interesting show today, and I know you'll be interested in seeing it. But before we get to the show, I'd like to go on with our animal sounds. Last week we had a sound that I'm sure that many of you recognized. I haven't gotten the cards yet because this show is just taped after you saw the other show. But let's listen to it and see if you can guess it now. There he is. That's a rhinoceros, and he's just as big and mean as he sounds. He's so big that his horn even extends off the side of the screen there, as you see. The rhinoceros and the elephant and the other large mammals, like the hippopotamus that live in Africa, are very interesting relics of an age that is pretty much past other areas of the world. Well, this week we've got another sound of another large animal. You can tell he's... Here he is. Okay, this particular fellow was a little bit scared and mad at the time that this recording was made. And perhaps you haven't heard him sounding in this way. If you have an idea, a guess as to what that is, why, send us a letter, write us a postcard to the Natural Science Museum, 10600 or University Circle, Cleveland, Ohio. Okay, and I really do enjoy getting your cards, and as I say, when we get the right answers, why, I'll read them on the air for any of you that get them right. But getting to our program today, there has been a lot of talk, more recriminations and agonizing over the pollution problem that is facing the whole United States. And we often hear people gnashing their teeth and worrying about it. But we very seldom find people that are doing something about it in a concrete way. And our guest today is a unique combination of a very concerned citizen who also has a high degree of competence in engineering and is doing very practical and very interesting things in the area of making Cleveland a better place to live. And I'd like you to meet Mr. Bert Raynes, who is Vice President of Rand Development Corporation here in Cleveland. Bert,
hi.
Glad you could be down here with us.
Thank you.
And you're Vice President in charge of...
Applied research.
Applied research.
Yep.
And we're going to be talking about what that means today.
Well, I hope so.
Fine.
A little bit.
By the way, what did you think that sound was?
Well, I'm not sure, Tom, but I think if you put some bossa nova rhythm to it, you have a hit on your hand.
Well, I think our viewers would do better than that. Bert, let's start at the beginning.
Okay.
You were presented with the problem here of how to make the pollution abatement more economical. And maybe you could just tell our viewers the story of how you approach this problem.
Well, basically, there are a lot of pollution problems, and there's going to be a lot of pollution answers. There will just have to be. But, and this is just one of the many answers that I hope are going to help. In effect, we have accepted a challenge that conventional sewage treatment has a byproduct called digested sewage sludge. And when it's dried, it looks just like this material here. I don't know if we can see it. It looks like topsoil, a little bit like dirt. As it is produced in a sewage treatment plant, it's produced as a slurry. In other words, as a watery solid mixture in which the solids can vary anywhere from about 5 to 15%. That sort of thing.
Bert, this looks just like good, rich topsoil to me.
Yes, and it sort of looks like good, rich topsoil to me, too. And it has, for a long time, looked like good material for use in growing crops to a lot of people. To the sewage treatment plant operator, though, it's a headache. About half of sewage treatment plant costs revolve around the handling of this particular material in a sewage treatment plant. So to the sewage treatment plant operator, it looks like something he wants to get rid of, and it looks like something that costs him money. And so we tried to come up with an idea that would take advantage of the good parts, the good things about this kind of material, and take advantage of saving the taxpayer's dollar a little bit. This material not only looks like good, well, reasonably good topsoil, it's called a soil conditioner, but it contains nitrogen, phosphorus, and trace elements, and a host of things that do help organic plants to grow. It is available, and people do use it in their gardens in some communities, including Cleveland. But it is uneconomic for the farmer, for someone who wants to use it in large quantity. And this material is produced in large quantity in a town. Sewage treatment numbers are huge, and it's very difficult to keep them in mind, even if you're an engineer and get used to it. Each one of us uses 150 gallons of water a day, and on the average, and so forth. I have found an easy way of keeping this one straight. In a sewage treatment plant, for each person, about 2/10 of a gallon of digested sludge is produced a day. And 2/10 of a gallon is a fifth. And so I'm able to keep that particular number in mind without any difficulty.
So you said that it is a problem, and yet that it is used as and actually commercially available. Maybe we could mention where people can get this if they want to.
In Cleveland, you can get it at the Westerly sewage treatment plant, in the outlying suburbs at most of the suburban sewage treatment plants. And
it's free?
It's free for the hauling. The farmer won't haul it because it just costs him too much to haul it. It's a good material, but it's not a concentrated good material. Mm-hmm. It's not as concentrated in plant nutrients as is superphosphate, something of that sort. So our idea was to see what we could do about this problem from an engineering and economic standpoint. And it turned out that people have done a lot about it. And all we have essentially done at Rand Development in this project is to take advantage of some techniques that some are very old, and some are, say, 60 years old. One is sewage treatment, where this material is produced. Second is agriculture, using manures and other fertilizers and things of that sort. And the third is transport of an economical nature. Instead of going down with a truck and picking up this material in small loads, we're investigating the use of pipelines to transport this material away from the site of generation, away from the city or the town, and instead of simply disposing of it and getting rid of it, as is now generally done because the sewage treatment plant operator simply has to get it out of his hair, and he incinerates it or cremates it or whatever, to put it to use. And it turns out that at distances away from large metropolitan towns, and these distances can be as high as hundreds of miles, there are areas that need reclamation assistance. Such areas as gravel pits and strip mines, and areas that have been denuded of forestation by a fire or that sort of thing. And our idea simply is that you can take this material, this very useful material, put it in a pipe, pump it out, and use it. Put it to use 100, 10, 200 miles away, depending on the size of the town and how much you have available. If it's a small little town, you can put it in a tank truck. If it's a town the size of Cleveland, with all its suburbs, you'd want a pipeline.
This sounds so practical. And is it economical?
Yes, we think it is. Our studies show that we ought to be able to save up to 80% of that half of the sewage treatment process if we pump even as far as, let's say, 100 miles for a city the size of 500,000 population, that sort of thing.
Bert, I think before we go any further, we should tell our viewing audience that there's no objectionable aroma to this. It's just as if we did have some topsoil here on the table.
We're talking about digested sewage sludge, not raw material, not garbage, not trash, digested sewage treatment sludge.
What do you mean by digested? I think the
This has gone through all of the techniques that conventional sewage treatment plant procedures can give it. It has been aerated and settled and conditioned with chemicals and put in a heated tank and kept for up to 30 days so the bacteria can work on it. It is pretty inert at this stage.
When you talk about digested, you mean the bacteria?
Bacteria have digested the organic content, converted it into simpler compounds.
Uh-huh. Well, you brought down some slides showing how you at Rand Development are using this, and we can show a strip mine area here.
Okay, we're doing this work for the Federal Water Pollution Control Administration, and I believe that slide shows, yes, an aerial view of a mining operation here in Ohio, giving you some idea of the kinds of lands that are available. This is an operation after the strip mine law has gone into effect, so it will probably be reclaimed satisfactorily. The next shot, I think, shows some lands that have been used by some interest or other, some mining interest, perhaps 30 years ago. And
nothing's still growing then.
Nothing's growing, and these are left on the taxpayer's docket. No one wants to use it. It isn't being used beneficially for any purpose. I think the next slide shows an area, this happens to be in West Virginia, of how a coal strip mine, in this case, was left before reclamation. And then this shot here is just about an hour's drive away from Cleveland, showing land that was stripped 30 years ago. And you can see an acid pool and just a few trees that have been able to survive on this extremely acid soil. And it's for these extreme conditions that I think that digested sewage sludge has its greatest usefulness.
I think that those of us that are those that have color television sets recognize that reddish water certainly doesn't look
acid mine water, very typical.
Very, very acid.
And that's over 30 years ago. This is an example of what happens when you try to make a forest grow again in very acid soil. You stick a seedling in and an open exposed area that's acidic, and they die, mostly. Some areas can be reclaimed, and there are very good laws now. The laws are getting better anyway. They're not as good as they could be.
Right.
They're getting better, and there are very conscientious people trying. But in a very acid area, there is difficulty. Now, this is a shot showing digested sludge being taken out, in this case in a tank truck, just had a couple thousand gallons, and showing you how it looks as it is being spread, as it is produced before being dried, as it is here in the studio. We took it out and poured it into an area which we made into a rectangle, so we know how many gallons we are using in our research. And in the next view, we show that it can be used also by hydraulic spraying. This is the way they now seed the sides of superhighways and that sort of thing. So put seed right in this material and spread it out.
I see. You can actually put grass seed in this tank with the sludge slurry.
Grass or trees, or vegetable.
And spray it right on the side of a cut bank, and it will grow, as we'll see later.
I think we start here now a series of some of our experiments which started back, I think at 65. We took an area and spread some sludge and then allowed it to dry, which it does by percolation and by evaporation. And the next slide, I believe, shows the typical cracking effect that you get as digested sludge dries.
I want everybody to look carefully at this slide because they'll be seeing this area taken from pretty much the same locality again. And you can see how completely denuded and sterile that soil is. It's about as inhospitable an area for growing as you could find.
And temperatures to 120 degrees sometimes in the summertime, right on the soil. It's just about like a macadam parking lot.
Yeah.
And then in these cracks, grass seeds or tree seeds or legume seeds, will find a hospitable environment. It's damp enough, there are plant nutrients, and germination starts in the cracks in the drying and dried sludge. And the next slide starts to show some growth. I can't see that too well myself, but I think that that's in about just less than a month. And then the next slide, I think, shows what happened after about 3 months where the sludge was applied. We did various things, various kinds of treatment. We added fertilizers and we added different seeds. These two things in the foreground are the places where the tank truck pulled away.
Just the ruts?
And some sludge ran into the ruts of the tank truck, and we got some pretty good growth there. And the next slide shows, after 3 months, what happened on this strip mine, which had not been reclaimed successfully before. This is in Ohio, and it's reasonably acid soil. You can see some tomato plants and some weeds and things of that sort.
Did you actually put the tomato plant seeds in with the sludge slurry?
No, tomato plants and squash and seeds of that sort go right through conventional sewage treatment and survive.
One of the few things that do.
They're still viable, yes, one of the few things that are.
Did you put grass seed with this?
We put 3 grasses and 1 legume in this particular experiment. They all worked pretty well. And the next slide shows the next spring, because it isn't enough just to show that you can grow something in this kind of material. That's well known. The question is, did you actually reclaim? Have you restored to usefulness this barren soil? And we did nothing further to these sites. We added neither seed nor sludge. And we now go through the next season. This is in the early spring. This is the flowering, the first flowering and going to seed. Tomato plants don't come back up again for some reason, but the bird's foot tree foil took over. And this looks like ryegrass. It took over in about early summer and went to seed. And then there was one more crop that winter, all going on itself. We're building up topsoil and restoring this particular terrain.
Is this actually going down into the soil and changing the composition of the soil?
We have some slides that we tried to take to show this. These were taken actually by the government people. It's just possible to see. We just took a trowel and stuck it in there and dug down in. And it's really difficult to tell, but those roots have penetrated almost 24 inches into this acid spoil in this 1 year and a half or so of growth. And this is another shot trying to show this root penetration. I think there's, well, it's our opinion certainly, and it's also that of the federal people that reclamation was accomplished on this spot.
Bert, you mentioned federal people, and I think you mentioned briefly before that you're doing this for the Department of the Interior.
Department of the Interior, Federal Water Pollution Control Administration.
And in Washington?
Out of Washington, yes.
And it's amazing to me that more of us haven't heard about this. You always hear about the problems and the horrors, and everybody tries to lay blame. Now, you're not interested in laying the blame at anybody's doorstep,
no,
just solving the problem.
All we're trying to do is make available techniques that the politicians and the people that have to make the choice can make. That's an engineer's job as I see it. It's not our particular job. That's my professional opinion. As a person, I work very hard for conservation, as you know.
Yeah.
But as a professional approach, we try to make available to the, let's say, the civil engineering profession, or the politician, or the taxpayer, an alternative to what he has now. And on the basis either being more effective or being less expensive. Mm-hmm. We have 3 programs at Rand Development. Right now, 3 major ones on water pollution control, and that's the aim in each case, is to try to present another alternative for someone to use. This particular one, I think, is I'm very fond of because it seems to be useful and it's going to save money at the same time, which is an ideal situation.
Sure.
It's cake and eating it too type of thing.
Yeah.
But not all that way.
You mentioned that the engineering profession, and you are a chemical engineer, mm-hmm. and Are there other efforts being made by other companies in this direction and other members of your profession?
There's a lot of work going on now, and especially in the last 5 years or so. And as you say, not much of it is heard about. The Federal Water Pollution Control Administration has a great many, not only graduate student programs, but practical, experimental, and large-scale programs such as this going on. And they're not the only ones. There are other people interested in water. One of our other sponsors is the coal industry. As a matter of fact, the Office of Coal Research is sponsoring one of our other projects down there at Rand Development. There is a great deal of work going on, and it's going to be useful. It's going to be helpful. It's the first. These things seem to run in cycles sometime. It's the first time in many years that people have tried to find innovative answers to the water pollution problems. Mm-hmm. We have to find them.
We're always told that this is going to cost a lot of money. Is this correct?
Cleaning up water and cleaning up your air and making your life more livable is going to cost money. The engineer should be trying to make it cost the least amount of money that he can. Mm-hmm. That's what we're trying to do. But it's going to cost money. It's going to cost someone money to keep our streams clean, our lakes clean.
I think
it's worth it.
Sure. I think so too, and I think it's very impressive to me to meet legislators and people from the state of Ohio that are working towards the governor's proposed $350 million bond issue, which will be directed towards pollution, and our viewers or their parents are going to have the opportunity to vote on this, and we certainly
That's a lot of money, and if it's used wisely, it'll do a great deal of good.
Right, right. And it's not just Ohio that's doing this. Everywhere you go around this country, every state is recognizing its obligation. It's not just an obligation, it's a dire necessity of doing something like this. Bert, you mentioned two other projects that you were doing with the coal industries, and
one is with the coal. We have a job for the Office of Coal Research, and they represent the coal industry trying to develop new uses. And in effect, it's trying to develop a sewage treatment plant entirely different from this one. And there would be no product such as this out of that particular one. That's a brand new concept. It's not biological at all. We don't use the bacteria in that process at all. And it's just going into pilot plant now. And so it has a longer road to go to hoe before it gets into practice, whereas this material is available daily everywhere. And we have a third project, which is quite a bit smaller, going on here in Cleveland, to try to just take out large and visible trash from sewer overflows. Cleveland, as most large cities, have overflow sewers. And when a rainfall comes, the sewers can't always handle what is given to them. They have to vent them to protect the system. This material that gets vented is just diluted sewage, goes directly into streams, lakes, rivers. So we propose a rather simple concept of just filtering out some of this material. And of course you can filter it. The question is, can we make this cheap enough so it can be operated without the need for people and that sort of thing?
Yeah.
That's located here in Cleveland. There's no end of problems in the water pollution control field, I'm afraid, or the air pollution control field. And there are more and more people seriously getting interested in it now, including the executive community.
But Bert, these solutions that you're proposing are so practical and simple. They don't entail a lot of a new factory or some high technological. You don't use computers, or do you?
No.
I think somebody said that what you're doing is obvious.
That's the highest praise I think a chemical engineer can ever get.
Right. But the fact that...
I thank that somebody.
The fact that you're doing it, that it works, and that it is economical, and I think this is the key thing.
Well, this project will be going into an extended pilot plant study in Morgantown, West Virginia. We'll build a 4.5-mile pipeline. We just took bids on it this week, as a matter of fact. Should be building started building in a few weeks, I hope. And by the end of the year, we'll be pumping through this line. There are some things to learn in order to make the process more and more economical. I'm sure it's going to work. It's just a question of cutting the costs as much as possible. And that's, I think, the name of the game for all the engineers and people in this in this field.
Could you tell us how this process of using coal works? Is it to be quicker, cheaper, or why are you working on this?
Well, it will be quicker in a way, but that's not the only reason. Again, it's a matter of cost. In effect, we're using coal as a big filter through which we filter sewage. And if everything works as either as we hope or as we can make it work to our will, we will try to borrow some coal from a public utility, let's say, for a while, use it to treat sewage, and then return it to this public utility. In this case, the public utility could save a little money on its coal cost, and the taxpayer could save a little money on its sewage treatment cost. So once again, economics comes in, and it should always come in to the picture when an engineer is talking, professionally anyway. It also has some side effect benefits. The product it produces, at least in the laboratory and on the small scale, seems to be superior to the water quality in certain respects than the sewage effluent you get from a conventional sewage treatment plant. For example, in detergents, detergent removal is exceptionally good, and it looks as though phosphate removal is good, and that's a big problem right now in Lake Erie and all the lakes and streams. So economics is there, and the hope for a better product is there. And a part of it too is just to indicate that there are alternative solutions to the old-fashioned solutions. Sewage treatment processes we have today were developed, and they're good ones. They were developed about 60 years ago. Basically because the harbors and the rivers and the streams, to quote the presidential committee report, began to stink. Well, the rivers and the harbors are beginning to smell again, and something has to be done. So there's a lot of people working on it, and things have to be done.
Well, I'm glad that you are. I'm glad that there's a degree of competence that's being brought into this area, and I think that all of our viewers should be very grateful to you and to what you're doing at Rand Development Corporation in this area. They might also be interested. Within the next week, you're going to be hearing on the radio and on television about an organization that is called Clean Air and Water, Citizens for Clean Air and Water. This is a very interesting concept that's taking place here in Cleveland, and I'm sure that everybody that looks at this program will be hearing about it. But may I just thank you, Bert, for coming down here and telling us something. I don't think that 10 or 15 years ago that this would be a television subject.
Probably not.
Thanks a lot for being here.
It's a little delicate one.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you for being with us on this world of ours.
This program is a public affairs production of WKYC Television in cooperation with the Cleveland Museum of Natural History.